Hello and welcome to episode 77 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. You all know me as the father of Jerry. As always, I am joined by Evan Silva, the lord of your top 150 rankings. We are entering the early part of prime draft season now. Evan, what's going on?
What's going on, Adam? Exciting and at the same time a somber time. I think we just learned that our both of our longtime co-workers and I consider him like a really good friend, even though I've only met him a couple times in real life. Chris Wessling was diagnosed as having cancer again after defeating it initially. It does sound like they caught it a lot earlier this time, and it is not like his first cancer affected his throat, and the cancer is not in his throat. He's a podcaster, so he needs his vocal cords, and I remember it really affected his vocal cords when he was battling it initially. But just really going to keep in my thoughts and in my prayers. And I know that I love Chris Wessling. Like he's an old soul, man. He's a guy that like I really like, even to this day, like even though he was my coworker, we worked side by side and back to back, especially during that 2011 coming back from the lockout. I think there were about 2 weeks because all the NFL news got jammed into like 2 weeks, and we would be doing shifts. You were involved in that too.
Yeah.
We would be doing shifts where we would work for like 14 hours. We would take like a 3 or 4 hour sleep break, and we get back on the clock, and you would kind of like tap someone out like, yo man, go get some rest, to be able to keep up with that news. And that really formed a bond between us, I think. And he's got a great wife. He's got a baby named Lincoln, and I know that his wife Lakeisha, I met her down in Tybee Island a couple years ago, and I know they're going to beat this, but I'm going to be thinking about him every single day until he does defeat it for good this time. But we also were able to we also hired Drew Dinkmeyer to run the NBA section, and I mean what a great hire. So exciting times, but also sad times in a way.
Yeah. Well said on Wessling. When I got to Roto World, Evan and Wessling were kind of in charge, and I loved working with Wes. I thought his thoughts on football, on like real football, not even fantasy, were just so far and above and beyond that it was applicable to fantasy. And so, yeah, I remember that lockout stuff well, where it was so busy. And one time I was like, Wes, are you sticking around for this like 11 o'clock hour? He was like, nah, man. I have a date with 24 beers. And I was like, okay, sounds good, man. I got it. So yeah, I love Wes. And I was so pained to see the video yesterday. You guys go to Around the NFL podcast. We had Greg Rosenthal on a few episodes ago. If you go on his podcast, you'll be able to check it out and send Wes some of your thoughts and some of your prayers. Okay. On today's show, we're going to cover one of my favorite annual topics, this year's coaching changes and how we expect them to impact statistical production this season. Before we get into all that, I wanted to let everyone know that we continue to pile content into our draft kit. Just $35, comes with a $25 FFPC coupon. Basically everything we think you need to get ready for the season, from Evan, myself, from Drew Dinkmeyer, now, etc. For more on Dink, just listen to episode 76, and you'll get a read on it from there. But I do want to get to the topic at hand, man, because coaching changes. Like, football is so unique. One of the things that's unique about football is that coaching really can make a difference, like a huge difference in fantasy production, right? It's just not true in baseball, and it's not even overly true in basketball, I don't think. Like, yeah, there's some coaching / managing philosophies in those sports, but it's not like the NFL. And I think it's threefold. Like, first, efficiency. Like, Jeff Fisher would not get the same efficiency out of this 49ers offense that Kyle Shanahan will, right? And second is tendencies. If you can study coaching tendencies, Andy Reid's going to have a higher neutral situation pass rate than, say, Brian Schottenheimer. Then there's also player utilization. We understand that Cliff Kingsbury is going to have more 4 wide receiver sets than anyone else in the league, right? And some coaches prefer 12, 2 tight end sets. Others are in 3 wide as much as possible. So by understanding all those things, you can really get an edge in player projection. And I think that by studying coaching and coaching tendencies, it goes a long way. So yeah, I think that's something that's unique about football and something that's tough to model. And And I may not tough to model, but you can model it. But a lot of people are just glossing over it. So yeah, do you feel as passionate as I do about coaching tendencies, Evan?
Well, at first, when I was beginning my fantasy football career, I thought that coaching meant like almost everything. And then I really took a step back. I remember you and I arguing about this one time, actually, that I was like, I was in this phase where I was like, I thought it was overrated. And now I've kind of come full circle. And I think that the best way maybe to assess how much coaching matters is sort of like we do with strength of schedule, sort of like we do with wide receiver cornerback matchups, really matters at the extremes. And I think that that's the case for so many things. And so our job now, I think, is to try to determine where do those extremes lie. And we're going to get to the Giants and Jason Garrett, at potentially one end of the spectrum. And we're going to get to like the Panthers with Joe Brady at potentially another side of the spectrum. We know Kyle Shanahan matters, and he's absolutely at one of the ends of the extremes. And then Jeff Fisher would have been a guy who was at the other end of the extremes, suffocating talent. So it's a great topic to talk about, and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah, I think people run into trouble when they say like, oh, Kyle Shanahan, X receivers always go off. Well, he had Andre Johnson and Julio Jones. You know what I mean? Like, I think people just need to understand that, of course, Julio Jones and Andre Johnson are going to be great players no matter what. I think when you get into other things like personnel and some of the tendency stuff that I mentioned, I think that's where it matters more than trying to say in the past, X guy has not used his tight ends. Well, he hasn't had any good tight ends, or X guy has whatever. Okay. So we're going to go through, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coaching changes here that we think are worth talking about. First one, Matt Rule in Carolina goes ahead and replaces Ron Rivera, brings in Joe Brady to be his OC. I know Matt Rule relatively well because he was at Temple from 2013 to 2016 and really turned their program around, made Temple has like legit NFL players now, like all over the NFL. And Matt Rule, I think, has a lot to do with that. Went to Baylor for 2 years and then really quickly, like I said, started Temple in 2013. Now all of a sudden, head coach in the NFL. I think he's known as more of a defensive guy, known as more of like a leader of men type guy. And then he brings in Joe Brady. Joe Brady is 30 years old. Okay, this is serious, man. I'm excited about Joe Brady. Passing game coordinator, a.k.a. the offensive coordinator for LSU, is just absurd offense last season. So I'm excited about what Joe Brady can bring. We know how he likes to use running backs out of the backfield. We know how he likes to use only 5 guys in protection. What do you see with Carolina's coaching change this year and how it affects guys on their team?
Yeah, so I agree that Matt Rule looks like he's going to bring more of a CEO approach to Carolina. He's not going to call offensive plays. He was an offensive line coach and a passing game coordinator and an offensive coordinator in his past. But those duties are going to be left up to Joe Brady. I think that the Panthers hired Matt Rule because they see him as a program builder. He rebuilt the program at Temple. He rebuilt the program at Baylor, and the Panthers now need to be rebuilt, and that's what he's going to do. And he made a great hire, I think, in Joe Brady. Now, Joe Brady is 30 years old. He's going to turn 31 in September. His track record is obviously not long because he's so young, but he is going to be the play caller. He spent 2018 as the Saints quarterbacks coach under Sean Payton. He got to know Teddy Bridgewater there. That certainly played some sort of role in the Panthers signing Teddy Bridgewater. Last year, Joe Brady was at LSU. LSU ranked 14th out of 130 Division I programs or NCAA programs in pass attempts, 14th in the nation in pass attempts. They were 99th in rushing attempts, even though they were a team that played with a lead frequently. So that would suggest, and also coming from Sean Payton's background, very willing to be aggressive in the passing game. They were 35th out of 130 teams in offensive plays per game. And again, this was a team that just needed to grind out the clock at the end of a lot of games, and they still finished very high in offensive pace. They were number 2 in the nation in yards per play and number 1 in points per game. A lot just goes to the level of talent that they had at LSU, which was just absurd this past year. But you can kind of see his coaching tendencies, Joe Brady's coaching tendencies. He's very willing to be aggressive in the passing game. and he's very willing to play at an up-tempo pace. I remember watching that LSU-Alabama national championship game, and one of the things that stood out to me is just, man, they are firing off plays. Like they rip a play, and they even if it's like a 40-yard completion, like they are hustling to get to the ball and fire off another snap. So I think that this blends well with the makeup of the Panthers offense right now. They have a bunch of great run after catch specialists in Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore and potentially Ian Thomas, and certainly Christian McCaffrey is unbelievable after the catch. Robbie Anderson is going to be their clear out guy, I think. And this is one of the reasons that I think we are higher on Teddy Bridgewater than consensus.
Oh, for sure. And we also you guys can go back and listen in the draft kit is our 350 draft. We ended up, we did a live stream of it, and we ended up taking Curtis Samuel, which I think has serious upside. But yeah, I want to read you a couple quotes from Joe Brady and John Daigle. Our good friend John Daigle posted these on his Twitter. From Joe Brady, this was when he first got to LSU. He said, "We don't want any of our guys learning a position. They're learning concepts. We can move everybody around the field." And I think that's an exciting way to think about football. And then another one, as an offense, we want to get the running backs out in routes. Running backs, at the end of the day, they are here to run the ball and catch passes. They're not signed to play at LSU because they're dynamic blockers. I mean, it's setting up well, once again, for Christian McCaffrey. And obviously Christian McCaffrey is the 1.1, and everybody's going to play Christian McCaffrey in DFS. But I think this coaching change is just as good for Christian McCaffrey as the previous regime. The only thing is, maybe this regime thinks, hey, we can't have Christian McCaffrey on the field for 100% of the snaps. That's okay. If he goes down to like 80 or 85 or 90, like he's still just a total smash. So yeah, I'm excited about this Panthers offense. I wish they had some time to get to know this system before a training camp, but just is what it is with the NFL this year. And certainly continuity has been a theme we're going to keep talking about. All right, let's go to the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt are in as the head coach and offensive coordinator, replacing Freddie Kitchens and Todd MF and Monken. We've spent plenty of time already talking about how Freddie Kitchens screwed up last year, did not free Todd MF and Monken. Stefanski, longtime Vikings assistant, finally got the offensive coordinator job for the Vikings last year and put together a pretty good offense, extremely run heavy. I mean, fourth in running rate. Only Baltimore, San Francisco, and Tennessee ran the ball more in terms of rate than the Vikings last year. Also used a ton of two tight end stats with Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. And now they go out and they sign Austin Hooper. They still have David Njoku. Obviously, David Njoku was in the news last week for requesting a trade, which we can talk about, Evan. But how do you see Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt impacting what the Browns do and what's hopefully a bounce-back season for their offense?
We've already talked a good amount about Kevin Stefanski. Alex Van Pelt is interesting because he was the Packers quarterbacks coach from 2014 through 2017. Aaron Rodgers loved this guy. And this was, I think, sort of maybe the first inkling that we could have gotten between a potential breakup between the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, which, seems like it's forthcoming more and more as they, use a first-round pick on Jordan Love, and they're not really supplying him with weapons. They're trying to build an offense almost to limit Aaron Rodgers' impact on games. But this was when Aaron Rodgers was really playing at his height, and he loved Alex Van Pelt. He was pissed when he left, and now he's going to be the quarterback's coach for the position coach for Baker Mayfield. But yeah, Kevin Stefanski, I think, is clearly trying to build a physical football team in the likeness of the 2019 Vikings, for whom he was the offensive coordinator. The Browns' biggest free agent investment was Jack Conklin, an offensive right tackle. Their biggest draft investment was Jedrick Wills. They signed Austin Hooper. Not only have they kept David Njoku to this point, but they exercised his fifth-year option. Like, they want to keep David Njoku. I think David Njoku and Drew Rosenhaus knows this game way better than us, and he reps David Njoku. He knows what he's doing. But I think it's a mistake for the Browns, or for his this trade request. I think it's a mistake. I think he's going to get used a lot more than he anticipates, unless Njoku's camp has received some inclinations that Harrison Bryant, who the Browns drafted in the fourth round, won the Mackey Award at Florida Atlantic last year, is going to be, maybe like it'll be Austin Hooper out in front, and then Harrison Bryant and David Njoku competing for that second tight end spot. In that scenario, I guess I could see the trade request. But I think that either way, we're going to see a ton of 2 tight end sets, whether that second tight end is David Njoku or Harrison Bryant. They also traded for Andy Janovich, one of the best run-blocking fullbacks in the league. So, I mean, also Kirk Cousins under Kevin Stefanski last year was 5th in the NFL in play action rate. So it's very clear what they want to do. They want to build a team that can beat you up and a team that can win off play action. Baker Mayfield has been so much better off play action than without it to this point in his career. I like it because it looks like they finally have a plan that makes a lot of sense. And now they have the roster, the personnel to be able to execute it on the field. So I like what the Browns are putting together.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a 1-2 punch at running back, you can make a case the Browns have the best top 2 running backs in the league, right? With Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I mean, you can make a really good case those are the best top 2 running backs on any team. So they play on the ball with that. They play a lot of 12. I think it's crazy to see. I mean, I understand that he won the Mackey Award and everything. David Njoku is a freak, man. I know he hasn't done it yet. I'm pretty confident that at some point in his career, similar to Eric Ebron, similar to Greg Olsen or whatever other second contract tight end you want to talk about, I like David Njoku to be that dude. They'd be crazy to trade him.
Oh, he's 24 years old.
Right. Yeah.
When he was coming out of college, there were whispers that he was a little immature. Who isn't immature when they're 21 or 20? Mm-hmm. So, I'm totally with you. I think that he's a great buy low in Dynasty right now, David Njoku.
We saw volume concerns somewhat, I think, with Steph Diggs and not with Adam Thielen as much, although Adam Thielen was hurt a lot last year. How do you think Stefanski and Van Pelt impact Odell and Jarvis Landry?
Because I think that they are going to be a balanced to run first offense. I suppose you could argue that, the volume isn't going to be there for those guys. I still think the volume is going to be there because they're going to be the only 2 receivers on the field. The third receiver right now is Rashard Higgins, who, I liked in 2018. I don't know. He got in the doghouse. He got hurt early last season, and then he got in the doghouse, and we just don't know what the new regime, what they're going to be thinking of Rashard Higgins, although their new GM, Andrew Berry, lost me for a second there. Andrew Berry was on staff in the front office for Cleveland when they drafted Rashard Higgins in, I believe, the 6th round. He was a favorite of Matt Harmon, actually coming out of college, out of a small school. And I think that he is still an interesting player, but they're going to want to get 2 tight ends on the field. They're going to want to get this fullback, Andy Janovich, involved. And that's not going to leave a lot of snaps for that third receiver. These guys are going to be on the field all the time. I think the air yards are going to be there for Odell Beckham for sure because name another true vertical threat on the roster. Like there really isn't one. He's going to get a lot of deep ball attempts as that high read off the play action. And then Jarvis Landry had an awesome season last year, really, really quietly. And he's been good in every role that he is filled. And he was a really low ADOT receiver early in his career with Miami. They expanded his ADOT last year, and he shined. So I think he's underrated. No one wants to draft Jarvis Landry. I've got a decent amount of him because he feels like a not sexy pick at all, and I get it, but I will definitely take him as my third receiver.
Oh, and Jarvis Landry showed a big ceiling last year. Like I was playing Jarvis Landry in cash for the floor, but he had access to a big ceiling as well. I think even if you're worried about the volume for the pass game, efficiency is going to go up for this Browns offense. And they were so inefficient in the pass game last year.
Exactly.
So efficiency will be better. All right.
Yep.
Let's go to the Giants. Joe Judge comes in as the head coach. Jason Garrett, our old friend Jason Garrett from the Cowboys, comes in as the offensive coordinator, replacing Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula. Joe Judge, of course, has the allure of Bill Belichick on him, right? The scent of Bill Belichick, if you will. I believe he was with Nick Saban for like just a short time, but he's been with New England.
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah, okay. Alabama. Been with New England, mostly I think as a special teams coach since 2012. Only 38 years old is Joe Judge. I think what people are scared about and what we've talked about, we're scared about, is Joe Judge brings in Jason Garrett. Now, look, Jason Garrett has his flaws. I actually think, I don't like Jason Garrett, but I'm not in the camp to totally bury him. Dallas did lead the NFL in yards per play last season. I think he's a donkey. I don't think he's like the biggest donkey the NFL has ever seen. But I guess we'll see. I'm afraid that Evan is just so far down on Jason Garrett, though. He's scaring me on Daniel Jones.
Yeah, this is a tough one. First of all, Joe Judge, we'll just start with the head coach. as you mentioned, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick pipeline. I think that they envision him as like the next John Harbaugh, ideally. Like special teams coaches really don't get head coaching jobs in the NFL. And Joe Judge here did, and he's obviously not going to call plays on either side of the ball, and he's going to be a sort of, again, a CEO sort of head coach and, a player motivator and that kind of a guy. So we dip down into the coordinators, and Jason Garrett hasn't called plays in the NFL since 2012. Before Kellen Moore took over as the Cowboys play caller last year. And I mean, I tend to credit Kellen Moore more with the progress of the Cowboys offense last season than Jason Garrett, like maybe by a long shot. Mm-hmm. Before that, Jason Garrett was overseeing some of the run heaviest, slowest paced offenses in football. Go read Pat Thorman's article and check out Pat Thorman's analysis on this kind of stuff. Like, this is the biggest, like we definitely like what the Giants sort of have set up offensively from the upside that, the big game ability, the spiked week ability that Daniel Jones showed as a rookie, the likelihood that his fumbling problem he's probably going to be able to improve that, because that's just what players do when they come into the league, struggle with fumbles, they get that corrected. That's historically such a correctable flaw that I'm not even really worried about that. He was poised in the pocket. He was willing to keep his eyes downfield. He can run. He's got a pretty nice skill set when you look at all of his characteristics. And Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, Saquon Barkley, that is a very, very potentially explosive skill position core. And then they've really added to the offensive line. So the personnel is there. It really is this is the remaining question mark, I think, Jason Garrett, and how is he going to handle this offense? A report came out that he wants to play run first, milk the clock football. And I guess there's some merit to that, because I don't think their defense is going to be very good. So if they go in with that approach that, hey, our defense is going to stink, that's what they used to do in Dallas. They would just run DeMarco Murray a million times, try to keep their defense off the field. If they try to do that again, it's such a fragile way to play.
Yeah. And the pace stuff is certainly scary. The problem is it's easy to say, we're going to play slow, we're going to play run heavy, and then you're down 17-0, and then everything's out the window and let the guys fly. So we'll see on Jason Garrett. I think there's going to be a lot of week-to-week matchup stuff, both in season long and in DFS, where we'll be talking about a lot on the Friday night shows about Daniel Jones and the outlook for the offense. Let's talk about fellow NFC East change. Ron Rivera, Washington head coach Scott Turner, son of Norv, is in the offensive coordinator. Obviously, Jay Gruden was fired after that 0-5 start last year. Bill Callahan finished out as their interim. We all know Riverboat Ron was the head coach of the Panthers for 9 seasons. We have a large sample on what Ron Rivera likes to do. Scott Turner, son of Norv, was Carolina's quarterbacks coach for Rivera from 2018 to 2019. We know what Christian McCaffrey was able to do. The Redskins severely lack talent, I think, at a lot of spots. Obviously, they have Terry McLaurin. They have Darius Geis. Beyond that, there's a lot of question marks. How do you think Rivera and Scott Turner fit in Washington, Evan?
Yeah, the offensive line is scary too. The left tackle and the left guard, like, it's just up for grabs, and there's no practice time this year, and that's a terrifying situation. But back to the coaching. So Ron Rivera, we know who Ron Rivera is. He's a type A football presence, overseer, motivator. His players freaking love him. Everyone loves him. Mm-hmm. Everyone loves Ron Rivera. But one of those reasons that people like Ron Rivera is he stays out of the way. He's not going to go tell, Scott Turner on the sidelines, hey, you got to do this. Unless it comes down to like a 4th down crunch time decision or something like that. But he's not going to be dictating the offense. Scott Turner is going to be dictating the offense. Scott Turner, of course, son of Norv Turner. I liked a lot of things that Scott Turner and Norv did with the Panthers offense the past 2 years. In 2018, they fell off a cliff down the stretch when Cam's arm just kind of came off. But for those first 10 or so games, they were getting the ball out of Cam's hands quickly. They were compensating for their weakness. I want to say that Chris Clark was their left tackle that year, and he can't block anybody. So they emphasized getting the ball out of Cam's hands quickly. The narrative then was that his ADOT was lowered because he couldn't throw deep. And I think some truth to that, but mostly it was because their left tackle couldn't block anybody. And then last year, of course, they lost him in week 2. I mean, for as bad as Kyle Allen was, like for an second year undrafted free agent, I mean, he played pretty well for a second year undrafted free agent when you put that into context. And Scott Turner was behind that. I also know that he's a proponent of analytics because someone that I used to work with is tight with Scott Turner and knows that he's big into like exploring that kind of stuff. He was an analyst of some kind on Jim Harbaugh's Michigan staff not too long ago, and so definitely a guy who has dealt with numbers a lot. But at the end of the day, it's just the talent here is really, really questionable to say the least.
Yeah, I've actually ended up with a lot of Terry McLaurin in drafts that I've done so far. He slips to the fifth, sixth round sometimes, and obviously we have the shower narrative. For those guys that don't know, Dwayne Haskins, Terry McLaurin went to college together. Creates a bond when you shower with another man in college that has hopefully crossed over into the NFL, where they're going to see Haskins and McLaurin make some sweet music this year. There's just, when you're doing target projections and target shares, like there's not a lot of competition for Terry McLaurin.
Well, he's like the only guy that we want on the Redskins, and that actually that kind of sounds bad, but it actually could be good if he gets like 150 targets.
Yeah,
which is not crazy. It's not crazy to think that he could be in that 130 and 150 range. And man, whenever I'm on the board and he's still there and I'm like 3 picks away, I feel like he gets taken every single time.
Yeah,
I want him. But Terry McLaurin, what a baller.
Yeah, and one thing that I got from Brandon's defensive line pass rush rankings, which are up on the site right now, which are awesome, by the way. I loved reading those. But anyways, he has the Redskins, and I knew the Redskins had a good pass rush. I knew the Redskins had a good defensive line. Brandon has them in tier 1 at 4th overall. And, we know they're going to struggle in the back end. We know their offensive line, like you could be setting up a major pass funnel and a lot of shootouts if Dwayne Haskins can keep up his end of the bargain here. Because that Redskins defensive line is going to be one that teams aren't going to want to attack.
Let me mention one thing. So I did a PFF sort of roundtable last night, and Eric Eager, who's one of their
he was on the show,
premier data analysts. He mentioned that Dwayne Haskins really graded out well. I knew he played well in the last 4 games, but Eric mentioned that he was actually good from weeks 11 through the end of the season. So maybe the sample there is a little bit stronger than I thought initially, that he really graded well. And this is a dude who dominated in college football the previous year. I have concerns about the level of commitment if the Redskins start struggling early in the season. I mean, the Redskins went and traded for Kyle Allen. They gave up a 5th round pick for him, which doesn't seem like a lot to us, but that's a lot for a guy who was terrible. And they just got him for familiarity. And I always get worried about these situations where like of cronyism, where hey, we know this guy, let's get him, and they don't even understand that the dude is really, really bad. They like him, and he's really, really bad. And so that's one concern there.
Yeah, he's in the cocoon, as you like to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Chicago. And I'm not sure this one means that much because Matt Nagy called plays last year. I actually don't know if he still plans to call plays this year, but they did bring in Bill Lazor to be the offensive coordinator. And I also thought it was notable because Bill Lazor was with Chip Kelly back in 2013 as the quarterbacks coach here in Philly when Big Dick Nick Foles went off for 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in 13 games. Now, Bill Lazor has bounced all over since then. He's been with Miami. He's been with Cincy. Now he's in Chicago. And guess what? They signed Big Dick Nick. So I think optimism from a continuity perspective, at least in scheme and some concepts, if Matt Nagy's not doing it, if Bill Lazor's doing it, speaks well to Nick Foles. And Nick Foles, I mean, Evan thinks, I know, is heavy favorite to start over Mitchell Trubisky come week 1. Do you still feel that way on Big Dick Nick? Evan, what do you think about Lazor's impact on Chicago?
I think that Matt Nagy's still going to be running the show, but they have built an offensive staff that is just incredibly familiar. The familiarity between these guys up top, and it's not just Matt Nagy in Kansas City with Nick Foles. It's not just Bill Lazor in Philly with Nick Foles. It's also John DeFilippo, who's their quarterbacks coach, the Bears quarterbacks coach now, and he was with Nick Foles in Philly and last year in Jacksonville. That was supposed to be like their magical pairing, that they were going to pair John DeFilippo with Nick Foles and, have some success. But all those coaching staff, the levels of the coaching staff and the familiarity with Nick Foles, like if there's been some whispers that Mitchell Trubisky might start week 1, he's going to have the shortest hook you've ever seen. If that happens, I mean, he might not last a half. What was that year that the Texans opened with like Brian Hoyer and then Bill O'Brien pulled him like after the first quarter, something like that. That could happen again, I think, in Chicago. But that's the first thing that stands out. I still think that Matt Nagy is running this show, and so it's going to be very similar offensive concepts to last year. They downgraded. In the pass catcher core just looks bleak beyond Allen Robinson. That's another reason that we really like Allen Robinson this year, because they don't have any other good pass catchers. They really don't. Their offensive line, their decision making on the offensive line makes no sense to me. They had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. The only significant addition that they made on the offensive line was Jermaine Ifedi, a bust as an offensive tackle in Seattle. They're going to try to play him at right guard. He was signed to a minimum deal. I mean, Ryan Pace is going to get fired real soon, I think. And unfortunately, maybe Matt Nagy will go with him. But Nick Foles, him being on the field, the sooner the better, I think, for Allen Robinson.
Yeah. You just offended Anthony Miller Twitter, by the way. They're reeling right now. Anthony Miller Twitter is reeling right now.
Oh, well.
Okay.
I'm used to offending Bears fans and then being right.
Let's go to Cowboys. And this one, man, I don't know what to think about this one. Mike McCarthy is in. Kellen Moore is still going to be the OC, though. Kellen Moore is still expected to call plays. Mike McCarthy is in there as the head coach. Everybody knows Mike McCarthy, long time Packers head coach. I think it was 13 years. Took the year off last year. Funny Mike McCarthy video from last year. He was at like a girls' high school basketball game and like got into a fight with like a ref and like followed this ref out of the arena, like
what
screaming.
What a bad look, huh?
Yeah.
What a bad look. Imagine doing that.
I know. But he was kind of famous or infamous in Green Bay, I think, for kind of being an old school football guy, kind of a donkey. I believe one of his quotes while he was in Green Bay was "Statistics are for losers." But now, after getting hired by Dallas, he's talking about PFF, Pro Football Focus. He's saying, and I quote, "The evolution of analytics in football, I think it's clear." And he went on and on about now he's some big analytics guy after not that long ago saying statistics are for losers. Now, is he just saying that to appease whoever, or does he actually believe it? People can change for sure. Dallas played so fast last year, as Evan already alluded to. I think they'll play that fast again. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, Dallas is very exciting. I don't think Mike McCarthy's going to screw this up. What do you think about Mike McCarthy in Dallas?
I don't think he's going to screw it up. If you would ask me in February, should any team hire Mike McCarthy, I would have said no way. Hire some young guy. But yeah. I'm actually buying into this working. I think that first of all, I like the fact that he is going to leave offensive play calling to Kellen Moore, and they're not going to change a whole lot. Kellen Moore, like, literally was the teammate of a bunch of these guys that are on the team now. They trust in him. As you mentioned, they had a great offense last year. They have a lot of continuity. They're bringing back their OC. They're bringing back their franchise quarterback. They're bringing back, stud 1 and 2 receivers. And the biggest change that they made in their pass catcher, in their skill position core, was pulling out Randall Cobb and Jason Witten and elevating Blake Jarwin and drafting freaking CeeDee Lamb with the 17th overall pick, the best pick in the entire draft. They are losing Travis Frederick at center, but they're bringing back 4 or 5 offensive line starters. So that's a lot of continuity. I think that he realizes that. He's a smart enough guy that one of the things that he got banged a lot for in Green Bay was running just constant 3 receiver sets with no personnel package diversity and requiring his receivers to win in the route, as opposed to using like stack and bunch concepts and pick plays to try to get them open, which the receivers needed at that time. Well, guess who doesn't need stacks and pick plays to get open? Freaking Amari Cooper and Michael. Okay, so I'm super, super high on the Cowboys, and I really haven't. I can't say that I've been that way, for a while. And I'm staying that way. They've given me, even Mike McCarthy, a guy that I would have doubted in January and February, has actually, the decisions that he's made has elevated my confidence in the Cowboys this year.
Yeah, and to reiterate, Kellen Moore is still the offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore is still calling the plays. So I think there's a lot of room for optimism just based on that alone, even if Mike McCarthy regresses somewhat off of what he's saying. Okay, another impactful OC hiring was in Denver because Vic Fangio, the head coach, is kind of a defensive guy. I mean, he's a full-blown defensive guy. He's more the defensive coordinator and head coach. He brings in Pat Shurmur to replace Rich Scangarello. Pat Shurmur, obviously the head coach of the Giants 2018 and 2019. Pat Shurmur just has struggled so badly as a head coach at every spot. He's now 19-46 as a head coach overall. Been really conservative, I think, in terms of ADOT, but he does lean somewhat pass heavy. We've talked a lot about Drew Lock this offseason. We haven't talked a lot about Pat Shurmur. Do you think this is a step up from what they did last year in terms of offensive coordinating?
I just think that this is not a good situation for – they have the most turnover of any offensive unit in the league. They changed out Rich Scangarello for Pat Shurmur. They changed out their quarterbacks coach, T.C. McCartney, for Mike Shula, a guy that don't get Greg Rosenthal started on Mike Shula. He will rip him a new one. They got a lot older in their coaching staff. Scangarello and McCartney are young guys. Shula and Shurmur are older guys.
Yeah.
And I think that the sort of soul of the Broncos is still going to be tied to Vic Fangio. They went out, they signed Melvin Gordon, they retained Mike Munchak as offensive line coach. Defense clearly remains the strength of the Broncos team. So I'm pretty down on pretty much everyone except for maybe Melvin Gordon in the Broncos offense. And I began the offseason sort of way more optimistic, but the more that I've looked into this and the more that we've seen the coronavirus situation affect practice time, I think this is a team to hard fade. I looked at DraftKings Sportsbook, their win total for the Broncos. It's at 7.5 right now. That seems awfully high for the team, just undergoing major transition. I do think their defense is going to be good. Maybe they can get to 8, but I think that they're a 5 to 7 win team. I think you just smash that under on 7.5 for the Broncos.
Okay. Yeah. I did like some of the personnel moves that Denver made this offseason, but as Evan said, there's going to have a hard time implementing everybody into the scheme this quickly, ton of turnover. I think we'll see on Denver. But yeah, Rich Scangarello was not impressive last year. I don't expect Pat Shurmur to be much better. Let's go to Jacksonville. They bring in Jay Gruden as their offensive coordinator to replace John DeFilippo, who we've already talked about. Jay Gruden, of course, Washington's head coach from 2014 to 2019. I mean, it's hard to evaluate Jay Gruden. Talent was so brutal for much of that. And ownership was so brutal for the entire time. I feel like he was kind of drawing dead. It's tough to evaluate what Jay Gruden did in Washington. Data shows balance in neutral situations in terms of run pass stuff from Jay Gruden. I think he's known more as a pass first guy, but that's not really what he did in Washington. But maybe ideally he's more pass first. I think a lot of people are saying, hey, he brought Chris Thompson down to Jacksonville. That's going to affect Leonard Fournette's target share, which I think that it has at least a chance to. What do you think about Jay Gruden down in Jacksonville?
Well, although Jay Gruden sort of flamed out as a head coach in Washington, I think that he more or less maximized the talent that he had on the team there and also in Cincinnati, where he performed. I mean, he maximized talent in Cincinnati, and that's what got him to become an NFL head coach. And then, I mean, he's got Steven Sims catching a bunch of balls and being productive. He's got, Terry McLaurin as a 3rd-round rookie getting open all the time. A lot of that is due to Terry McLaurin, obviously. But, I mean, they had a good thing going there with Case Keenum and Terry McLaurin. He had nothing. Can you even name a Redskins tight end besides Jeremy Sprinkle right now?
They cut my boy Donald Parham in the preseason. They're out of their minds.
Unbelievable. They've got Logan Thomas and Jeremy Sprinkle as their tight ends right now. Unfortunately, Jordan Reed could never stay healthy in Washington. I completely agree that he was drawing dead. I think from a conceptual standpoint, passing game concepts, Jay Gruden has the ability to scheme guys open. And I do think that he has shown many flashes of being a talent maximizer. And we're going to see DJ Shark in that Terry McLaurin role.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm trying to get a lot of DJ Shark.
Jacksonville obviously expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. A lot of talk. Jacksonville wants to tank for Trevor Lawrence. Should be interesting. Okay, let's go. We'll stay in Florida. Chan Gailey. I mean, how old is Chan Gailey now? But anyways, Chan Gailey is the Dolphins' new offensive coordinator. They fired Chad O'Shea. After just one season, of course, Chan Gailey reunited with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, the fantasy god. I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about with the Bucks is how Jameis and Ryan Fitzpatrick are so fantasy friendly. Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he gets to start a lot of the year, I think this will be a very fantasy friendly offense. The problem is, I think Tua is going to get in there at some point pretty early. Everybody's going to say about Chan Gailey, he never throws to his tight ends. I'm not taking Mike Gesicki. He doesn't throw to his Chan Gailey offenses. Don't highlight the tight ends. Blah blah blah. Do you have any take on that, Evan, and Chan Gailey with the Dolphins?
Well, I think that Chan Gailey's background is actually really, really interesting. He is an old guy, but he has been an innovator. You remember Tyler Thigpen?
Oh, yeah.
Tyler Thigpen, Dwayne Bowe, Tony Gonzalez just absolutely went off one year with, relatively went off for as much as Tyler Thigpen can go off. But they were like, you could start Tyler Thigpen in fantasy for a minute. And Dwayne Bowe had a big year, and Tony Gonzalez had a big year. And Chan Gailey was behind that. He really brought the pistol spread offense to the NFL that year. I want to say it was like 08 or 09. I don't know. I should have looked this up before the show, but I just remember that, and it really stood out to me. And Chan Gailey has been an innovator. He's run really run-heavy offenses. He's run really pass-heavy offenses, and he has been creative. Unfortunately, how do you install your creativity into the offense when you can't even freaking practice? So I actually think this offense is going to be awful this year. I'm way lower than consensus on your boy Gesicki. I'm lower on Devontae Parker. There's not really a running back. People want to like Breida. I love Breida as a little baller and a stud, but I don't see it with this offense. The offensive line is going to be terrible again. Fitzpatrick will probably have some moments, and there will be some games mixed in, but I'm fading the Dolphins offense like real hard this year.
I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, no matter who the coach is, going to create fantasy environments that breed spike weeks. Like, it just happens. He's going to throw pick sixes. He's going to get into catch-up situations. He's going to be very aggressive in terms of ADOT. They're going to play quicker. I'm more concerned for Gesicki and Devontae Parker that Tua is going to get in there and they're going to start playing conservative and try to take it easy on Tua. So,
that too. I mean, an in-season quarterback controversy also looms.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something to watch. Tua, definitely not benefiting from not being able to be at the facility to rehab his hip, to do playbook work, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see. Okay, let's talk about, this is the last one I think we're going to do here. The Vikings had to replace Kevin Stefanski. They go with Gary Kubiak. I remember Gary Kubiak from like the old school, before anybody like even realized what was going on. Running backs don't matter, et cetera. Like Gary Kubiak and this Kyle Shanahan zone blocking scheme in Denver. The original days of running back doesn't matter. I had Olandis Gary and Mike Anderson, guys nobody even remembers anymore, going off for like 4 touchdowns in this Gary Kubiak Shanahan zone blocking scheme. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for Gary Kubiak, but they were so successful. The Vikings were last year running the football. How do you think Gary Kubiak comes in and changes anything there, if at all?
Nothing changes. I mean, I think Kubiak definitely had a strong hand in what Stefanski was, more or less credited for last year. And the changes in the Vikings offense will come down to personnel. Pulling Stephon Diggs out of the offense creates a lot of, he didn't get a ton of targets last year, but he got a lot of air yards. And, who's going to step in for that? Obviously, they drafted Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is a different kind of player than Stephon Diggs. And Irv Smith becomes a guy that is like, he's really interesting. I do not have him ranked high right now, although I have drafted him a couple times.
Yeah, we took him in the 350. Yeah,
we took him in the 350. So I think we're going to see a little bit more of Smith for sure. I'm not sure what Jefferson's going to do. I think that Thielen is going to get absolutely peppered, where we continue to be way higher than consensus on Thielen, and we will stay that way. But yeah, I mean, I think philosophically, nothing is going to change. I do think they're going to throw the ball maybe a lot more this year because their defense is going to be a problem. I think their secondary is just completely up for grabs. I mean, they had Mackenzie Alexander, Xavier Rhodes, and Trey Waynes. And look, Xavier Rhodes wasn't good, and et cetera, et cetera. Mackenzie Alexander was pretty good, but during an off season of, again, no practice, installing an entirely new secondary. I mean, that's going to take some time to come together. They lost Everson Griffin. He is not re-signed with the team. He was a big-time pass rusher for them. So I think that their pass attempts are going to go up, not because they changed their philosophy, but because their personnel and their strengths and weaknesses as a roster dictate it.
Yes, agreed. I don't think much is going to change with Minnesota at all. And anytime Adam Thielen gets to me in the 4th round, it's like I can't get the card up to the commissioner fast enough. It's just pure sex for Adam Thielen in the 4th round. I don't know how much longer that ADP is going to last on Adam Thielen, though.
JJ Zachariason at Late Round QB on Twitter mentioned that Adam Thielen in his Scott Fishbowl draft, Adam Thielen went as the wide receiver 20.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think we've got him in the single digits or something like that.
Yeah, ridiculous. Okay, head to the site. Draft kit is absolutely overflowing. I mentioned Thorne stuff. I mentioned the $350 replay, which I think you guys will enjoy. Got a lot of good feedback on that. Evan and I just talking out our thoughts through a 20-round season-long draft on video, few beers, few laughs. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff on there also from Corain. Silva's team-by-team previews are up. Again, it's only $35 for that draft kit. Comes with a $25 FFPC coupon. So, for Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.